Ultraman, no system, no female lead, maybe slow heat. While traveling from Earth to an unknown planet, Leonix encountered a familiar red glowing sphere while experiencing the true meaning of life on a rundown planet. Under the wish of the youth, the king of Obumans, known as the strongest beast of fusion, entered his empty combat equipment, and thus, his own monster began. Chapter 1. LeBronx and Red Ball. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Schwa. What kind of monster fighting is this? On the dilapidated wasteland with flying yellow sand, a huge dinosaur-like monster is trampling on the ground, closely following a disheveled man ahead. Every step of the monster made the earth tremble, and the carefree sweeping of its long tail made the yellow sand roll up into the sky. The man ran desperately. Even if he fell, he had to quickly get up because he understood that the big guy behind only needed 1 foot to crush himself into flesh, the kind of inseparable bone and flesh. Damn it. Why did I just click on that damn pop-up window at that time? The man climbed up from the ground again, gritted his teeth, and kicked his feet on the ground. With his superhuman physique, he quickly ran forward for a distance, narrowly avoiding the heavy foot of the monster. Damn it. Why is the combat equipment useless against this monster? Roar. Without the time to pay attention to the deafening roar of the monster behind him, the young man stepped on his torn shoes and continued to flee towards the front with all his might. The young man's name is Chinwoo, and he was an ordinary person about a few hours ago. But after encountering a pop-up window on a computer, his fate was deflected on this day. Dawn and dusk were as usual, taking advantage of the darkness to open the computer and prepare to start today's work. However, halfway through, the appearance of a pop-up window disturbed his interest. This is a white pop-up window that almost occupies the entire computer screen, with no content, only a meaningless blank space. Schwa. What the hell is this? Morning and Dusk cursed while moving the mouse, trying to remove the unsightly pop-up window. However, just as I clicked to close the window at dawn and dusk, a dazzling blue light lit up from the entire computer screen. What is this? With the final doubt, Morning Dusk lost consciousness. When I opened my eyes again, the Morning and Dusk had already arrived at a desolate canyon filled with yellow sand, a scene of the end of the world. After waking up in a daze, Morning Dusk, through necessary searches, touched a blue metal box with a white base on her body. The box is neither big nor small, just enough to be held by one hand. There are 3 square windows on the front, through which only the deep darkness can be seen in the morning and evening. Leonix. Combat equipment. Looking at the metal box in my hand that seemed familiar to me, my heart at dawn and dusk can be said to be filled with a mix of flavors. For this blue and white metal box, although I can't remember it clearly in the morning and evening, I still have some impressions. In the Tokusatsu series, Monster Fighter, that I have watched before, the unique device held by the special beings named Leonix. With this metal box, the Leonix can summon and control monsters stored in the box, and even capture other monsters. However, the box has an upper limit on the number of monsters that can be stored, represented by the square window on the box, which means that the Leonix can hold up to 3 monsters. So, is the next step to find my own initial partner. Hanging the combat equipment back at my waist, looking around at the desolate scenery, I felt a bit lost in the morning and dusk. But looking at the narrow canyon passage ahead, Chindusk knew that he had no other choice but to explore forward. After all, behind him was an incredibly hard rock wall. So, as the plot unfolded, the groping morning and dusk soon encountered a monster-eating Jamoniid. Jamanoid, who was gnawing on the giant spider monster, noticed the dawn and dusk approaching him quietly. One sweep was to lift the sneaky guy away, and then he began his pursuit. And at dawn and dusk, after a brief surprise that he had not been killed by the monster's tail, he began a chase battle with Jamanoid. He fled, it chased in the process of escaping. Morning and Dusk also realized that they had acquired the physique of Leonix and gained power beyond ordinary people, although for monsters, they were just stronger ants. Back to now, TMD. This big gecko is still chasing me. In the morning and dusk, he made a big leap forward and dodged the explosive fireball spewed out by Gemoniad. Quickly getting up from the ground, even ignoring the flames attached to his back, the present morning and dusk only wanted to escape the pursuit of the dinosaur monster behind him. Running out of the canyon into the wilderness, but even so, Gemoniad did not stop his pursuit of dawn and dusk. At the beginning, morning and dusk also thought of using a combat device to subdue this fierce big guy and escape danger. However, to the surprise of Chindue, as he raised his combat equipment towards Gemonio and tried to subdue him, he was the first to feel Gemonio's strong resistance. The combat instrument that originally shone in his hand also instantly dimmed. Seeing this situation, even in the morning and evening, one can only put away the combat equipment and continue to running desperately on the yellow sand-flying wasteland, occasionally jumping to avoid the fireball exploded by monsters behind. The morning and dusk ran like this for an unknown amount of time, thanks to him not being a purebred earthling now, but rather a Leonix. Otherwise, now he is either exhausted to death or shocked to death by the aftershocks of the explosion of the Gemonid fireball. The piercing gust of wind washed over the front, and the explosive heat behind was also roasting the back. Finally, upon another leap, the landing of dawn and dusk lost its previous luck. He landed steadily on a smooth sphere and then fell. Humans. Finally. Humans. At the moment of contact with the sphere in the morning and evening, a strange wave instantly spread towards all sides. Immediately after, everything except morning and dusk stopped moving, and time paused at this moment. Oh my God, this. He slowly climbed up from the ground in the morning and dusk, with only a few pieces of incomplete fabric inlaid on his body. He looked at the strange scene around him, and at this moment, his heart was only shocked. The crystal clear yellow sand particles floating in the air around, and the dinosaur monsters behind them, with their bloodthirsty mouths wide open, about to spit out explosive fireballs, and the red glowing sphere half buried in the sand ahead, flickering bright and dark. Looking at the red ball ahead, the morning and dusk suddenly felt somewhat familiar, and at the same time, they also felt a sense of being called out from the ball. Come. Come. The sound is intermittent, like a communicator being disturbed. In the morning and dusk, I felt a slight tingling on my scalp, but upon reflection, I had no resistance to the presence that could cause such an anomaly. Take it as it comes. Since the other party has not solved themselves in a timely manner, there is still a possibility of survival for oneself. With this thought in mind, Chindusk walked towards the glowing sphere and picked it up. What wish do you have for me to fulfill, the last human on this planet? Chapter 2. Leonix and King Obumans. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Do you have any wishes for me to fulfill, the last human on this planet? Holding a red glowing sphere in hand, a clearer sound was heard in the morning and dusk. Some sound like mature female voices, but upon closer examination, one can feel many overlapping voices. There are the voices of young men, the tender voices of young children, and the hoarse shouts of elderly people. It's like humans from different locations and age groups around the world are speaking this sentence in different languages. Human, what wish do you have in your heart? Just tell me and I can fulfill it. However, it should be noted that you can only make one wish. As the sound changed, the red ball flickered again, awakening a slightly dazed morning and dusk. Like the whispers of demons full of bewitching ability, the attention of dawn and dusk couldn't help but fall directly into the words of the red ball. Wish, what do you have? Morning dusk lifted its head slightly, looking through the sand particles in mid-air towards the unknown starry sky behind the gray sky. Are you going home? Turning around again, I looked at the monster behind the yellow sand curtain, which had opened its mouth and emitted a faint red light, forming the image of a dinosaur exploding fireball. Or do you want to stay here and engage in that troublesome monster fight? As he murmured to himself in the morning and dusk, the red ball in his hand flickered continuously with his self-talk at this moment. The Leonix combat instrument, which was originally hanging around the waist, was also shining slightly. Both seemed to be waiting for his choice, waiting for the final human decision on this planet. Ah! Roaring loudly, the heart of dawn and dusk is tormented at this moment, while on the one hand, it reminisces about the past life and the parents who raised it to this day. If he goes missing, the couple will definitely go crazy in search for him all over the world. On one side, it was a completely unfamiliar world, different from the previously dull world that could be seen at a glance, but a special world with strange beings such as Ultraman, monsters, and cosmic beings. In this world today, he doesn't have to face the trivialities of the past, he doesn't have to face the insults and urging of his leaders, he just needs to be himself. Because he is currently a Leonix active on an unknown planet, all he needs now is a powerful force to protect himself. So, Red Ball. Can you really achieve any wish? I can do whatever you want. Since that's the case. Listening to the reply of the red ball in his hand, Chindu's gaze gradually became firm. If he remembers correctly, the ultimate goal of the monster fight he had seen over a decade ago was to select a successor to LeBronx from a group of LeBronx and become a new ultimate life. If one can become the so-called ultimate life, can they travel through time and space and return to their original world? Obviously, Morning Dusk has made up its mind. Red Ball, let me have the power to cross dimensions and tear apart the universe. The wish cannot be fulfilled. Sure enough. However, since that's the case. Red Ball. Please let the strongest monster king with the power to defeat Ultraman fight for me. I have received your wish. Morning and Dusk held up the red glowing sphere in their hands high, and as the opponent flickered, the previously stationary spacetime began to return to normal. Huangsha resumed its normal trajectory and reorganized into a member of the suppressed sky curtain. The explosive fireball that Jimoniat had accumulated for a long time in front of him also blurted out and shot fiercely towards the position of Dawn and Dusk. Roar! However, as the exploding fireball passed through the screen of sand particles and was about to hit Dawn and Dusk, a loud roar like that of a Tyrannosaurus Rex in a movie rang out in this vast wilderness. Subsequently, a bright lightning bolt fell from the yellow sand-covered sky, blocking the exploding fireball. Roar! The roar of the dinosaurs came from mid-air again, attracting the attention of both Morning and Evening in Jimoniat. A dark cloud suddenly appeared in the originally gloomy yellow sand sky, and then, surrounded by a terrifying circular lightning, the black cloud quickly expanded and occupied a corner of the sky. The center of the black cloud became chaotic, with bright currents surging through it, as if a terrifying presence was brewing. Roar! A lightning bolt fell from the chaos in the center of the black cloud, hitting the land between Dawn and Jimoniat. Subsequently, a tall monster slowly emerged from where lightning struck. It's like loading a character, first with a ferocious head, then with a torso, and then with broad feet. Roar! The final appearance in front of one person and one beast is the Obumans king, who has bone wings on his back, 2 rows of fine pointed teeth on his abdomen, and stands at a height of 80 meters. He is known as the strongest fusion beast. Roar! As soon as King Obumans appeared, he let out a loud roar and fanned a pair of bone wings behind him, causing a gust of wind. It seems like celebrating one's debut or perhaps just venting. Grass. The Morning and Dusk were swept by this sudden storm, accompanied by large pieces of sand and stones being blown out hundreds of meters away. If he were still the ordinary earthling he used to be, he would have died now, but fortunately, he belongs to the Leonix. The advantages brought to him by his far superior physical fitness are also reflected. For him, the impact that could be fatal to an ordinary person was just a pain, and even the sharp fragments that had cut through his body began to heal within a few breaths. Red Ball. Facing the strong gust of wind blowing not far away, Chindusk walked towards the red ball that had just fallen from his hand. If at first he didn't realize what this red sphere was, he just felt a bit familiar. So when the large dinosaur monster with thick bone wings appeared, he remembered everything about it. The ultimate presence that appeared in the theatrical version of Heisei Sanjia's first encounter. The wishing red ball, hailed as the universal wishing machine, comes from the hands of future humans. In the drama, this guy responds to the wishes of several children, materializes the clay figurines they hold, and transforms them into the majestic giant monster Obumans in front of them. If you think about it carefully, there shouldn't be any problem with the appearance of Red Ball summoning this guy. Defeating the power of Ultraman, this guy once suppressed Gaia in the play, and finally became a member of Gaia's highest undefeated record only after being defeated by Digga and Dana, who separated the individual. The strongest monster king, this guy was known as the strongest fusion beast and the strongest monster king at that time. Therefore, under these conditions, the final summoning of this Obumanth king was at dawn and dusk. Human, your wish has been fulfilled, and my mission in this time and space has also been completed. See you later. Damn it. The red glowing sphere flickered rapidly in the sand several times before disappearing in the next moment. Witnessing the disappearance of the red ball and listening to his final announcement, Chindusk couldn't help but kneel on the ground and punched the sand beneath him fiercely, as if venting. What's the use of having a monster that doesn't obey commands? Chapter 3. King Obumans and Conquest. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Roar. Just as the morning and evening were filled with resentment towards the actions of King Obumans and the departure of the wishing red ball, Obumans not far away also launched its actions. Stopping to fan the bone wings of the storm, King Obumans walked with heavy steps towards Jomanoid, who had been overturned by the strong wind. Roar. Feeling the intense tremors on the ground, Jomanoid's eyes showed a humanized fear. Just like adults facing young babies, the difference between the two is visible to the naked eye. Jomanoid quickly flipped his body, stood up from the ground, and then turned to run. However, its every move was within the gaze of King Obumans. At the center of the frown on the ferocious head, the peculiar red crystal, resembling an eye, slowly closed like an eye. The mouth slightly opened, and in the next moment, the burning beam of light, known as the Gremet light, poured out from the mouth. Orange energy rays swept across the earth, causing a series of big explosions. Roar. Amidst the roar of the explosion, Jomanoid was swept by the burning beam of King Obumans. In its painful howls, the body collapsed weakly. Subsequently, inflation-fried chunks of meat danced freely in the sky. Roar. After raising his hand to block the chunks of meat flying towards him, King Obumanth roared up to the sky, as if proclaiming his victory. Then, with a roar and a glance, he turned and walked towards the direction of dawn and dusk. What? Witnessing the overwhelming battle at dawn and dusk, I couldn't help but feel a hint of fear towards the towering beast in front of me. After all, King Obumans did not enter his combat gear, so for now, the opponent belongs to the monster that was abandoned after being summoned by the red ball. If we follow the neighboring Pokémon, this is a wild elf. So, even if the other person walks over and stomps on themselves in the next moment, it's not surprising in the morning or evening. But what surprised the dawn and dusk was King Obumans stopped in front of him. With heavy steps, each one that could make the morning and dusk feel earthquake and the soles of his feet soften, King Obumans finally stopped in front of him. Looking at the huge feet that stopped in front of me emitting a strange odor, I felt a bit lost in the morning and dusk. Roar. Listening to the roar of King Obumans, I didn't understand what this guy meant at first sight. But soon, he noticed the flickering light of the waste combat instrument and the faint information floating in his mind. Enter. Want to. Enter. Looking up at the ferocious head of King Obumanth, Chen suddenly realized that this was a manifestation of his own Leonix abilities. And in front of him, the King Obumanth was thinking of entering his combat gear. Although I don't know why, morning and dusk understand that this is an opportunity. Once the monster enters the combat equipment, it will now have to obey the command of his Leonix. With the help of the theatrical version of the boss, Obumans King, winning the Leonix battle is sure to be much easier. Although Obumans can be said to be the weakest theatrical boss after losing a red ball, he is once again a theatrical boss. Can suppress without any unexpected circumstances even narrowly defeating a powerful Ultraman. This alone is enough to defeat most monsters, and the King of Obumans can also be called a powerful hero. Don't forget, this big guy also has the ability to divide and proliferate. Being able to differentiate into two other monsters with sea and air combat capabilities, but for this reason, the King of Obumans can be considered a powerful support for the Leonix. After all, the Leonix can only store a maximum of 3 monsters, and one monster from the King of Obumans can hold up to 3. This greatly increases the space for selecting the remaining 2 monsters after dawn and dusk. So, from now on, you will be my combat partner, please take care of me. Regardless of whether King Obumans understood or not, he raised his flashing combat equipment in the morning and dusk, shouting loudly at King Obumans. Roar! And in response to him was the thunderous roar of King Obumans. There is some pain in the ears, but compared to conquering a powerful monster as the initial partner, this pain is nothing. Schwa, I only heard a sound that sounded like swiping a card, and the blue and white combat instrument slightly opened, flying out a golden card composed of energy bodies. The card came to a stop in front of the chest of King Obumans, while the latter took the initiative to meet and extended a slightly short forelimb to touch the card that was too narrow for him. Subsequently, the card flashed, and then the King of Obumans transformed into an orange energy body and entered the card, which flew back into the combat equipment in Morningfall's hand. OB is at King Meng's. Through the square window above the combat instrument, one can vaguely see the curled-up Obumans King resting, recovering from the consumption of the previously released burning beam and some other losses. Is that so? From the moment King Obumans entered the combat equipment, he established a connection with him in the morning and evening, and could feel his physical condition and some emotions. As a result, Morning Twilight understood why the King of Obumans had taken the initiative to become his combat partner for the Leonix. The main reason is to wish for a red ball. Obumans is different from other monsters, and in a sense, this creature belongs to the creation spawned by the red globe. Therefore, as long as he leaves the red ball, this guy can be said to be in a state of rapid shrinkage. And after the other party dealt with the dinosaur monster, they smelled the special existence of themselves or the combat equipment. Under the urge of that feeling, King Obumans entered the combat equipment and became his combat partner in the morning and dusk. As long as you enter the combat equipment, the King of Obumans can retain all his strength while cutting off contact with Red Ball. At the same time, the combat equipment can also repair some potential damage for the King of Obumans. King Obumans has no objection to becoming a weak sword. After all, for it, as long as it can live a good life and provide a permanent residence, it will not hesitate to provide necessary combat power. It will be fought for by the King of Obumans. So, according to the classics I've read before, please take more care of me in the future, King Obumans. Whispering softly to the square window of King Obumans, what he didn't notice in the morning and dusk was that as he looked up at his surroundings, the dormant King Obumans also opened his eyes at this moment, took a deep look through the window, and then closed them again. So where should I go next? Looking at the large amount of meat piled up on the road ahead due to the explosion of dinosaur monsters, and then turning around to take a look at the unknown road behind the yellow sand blocking the way, I once again fell into a decision in the morning and dusk. Chapter 4. The Night Raid of Tailenstone. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After simple contemplation, dawn and dusk choose to turn around and walk towards the unknown desert. After all, the location you came from was deep in the canyon, and there won't be anything to explore. Walking in the lifeless desert, without plants, not even a monster in sight. Only yellow sand, boundless yellow sand. In this situation, after walking for dozens of kilometers in the morning and evening, the wind and sand stopped, and the originally clear sky instantly dimmed. It's like the sun, which was still glowing and heating, being packed into a closed box. Not only does the visibility around decrease significantly, but even the temperature drops to a low point. Even with the terrifying physique of Leonix, who is even more terrifying than a beast in the morning and dusk, he still feels unusually cold. It's like taking off and standing outside in the winter on Earth, feeling cold, even though the clothes in the morning and evening can be said to be gone now. After all, his clothes were already being chased by Jornoid when they were bombarded by the opponent's explosive fireball, leaving only his front body and not providing any insulation. Only the remaining crotch cloth on his lower body is still firmly protecting his last dignity. Thirsty and hungry, my body had to curl up due to the piercing cold. My gaze shifted towards the distance, and in the darkness where I couldn't see my fingers, I faintly saw a pair of bright and shining eyes in the morning and dusk. Whoosh! A dazzling fiery snake shot from a distance, but fortunately, it lifted its combat equipment in time for the early morning and evening when it had been noticed. A pair of dazzling golden bone wings extended from the combat equipment, perfectly protecting the morning and evening in the scorching flames. Relying on the resting Obumans king in the combat equipment, Dawn and Dusk successfully blocked this originally deadly blow. Go up, King Obumans. After the blazing flames subsided, he drank loudly in the morning and dusk, summoning the King Obumans from the combat equipment, roar. Pang Rant's fierce beast emerged from the golden card emitted by the combat device, and the King of Obumans once again stood on this land. Casually smashing away the blazing fire snake, King Obumans quickly approached the attackers in the distance with broad strides. Dong! A powerful sweep was thrown out with the rotation of the body of King Obumanth, and with a dull sound, the attacker was knocked out by King Obumanth. Sand and stones splattered everywhere, and the attacker slammed heavily into the sand, vigorously moving his limbs, trying to scrape himself out of the sand. On the other side, King Obumans did not immediately use the Gremmet Ray to end the encounter, but chose another way, roar. King Obumanth let out a roar first, and through the special connection between Leonix and the monster, he notified Morning Twilight to close his eyes first. Subsequently, the special red crystals between the head and eyes quickly opened and closed, and then the huge bone wings behind began to gather energy with the closure of the crystals, rapidly emitting light and radiance. Roar! As the brightness of the backbone wings reached a peak, King Obumans roared again, as if confirming to Dawn whether to close his eyes tightly or simply vent his emotions. Following the roar, the golden color on the bone wings began to detach, and the condensed golden energy ball slowly climbed upwards. When the golden energy ball reached a certain height, the attacker trapped in the sand finally dug himself out of the ground. But before it could even be grateful for it, a sudden and intense flash from above in the darkness made it feel intense pain again. Stimulated by strong light, it finally crawled out of the sand cave and rolled back in. The strong light coming from the air naturally comes from the special energy ball released by King Obumans just now. Like an illumination flare, the special energy light ball directly transforms the dark night in the area where dawn and dusk are located, which is out of sight, into daylight. This is really an amazing King Obumans. Putting down the hands that were used to block the strong light, Chandusk couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the high mountain blocking in front of him. Relying on the special physique of Leonix, morning and evening not only achieved a significant improvement in overall physical fitness, but also an increase in memory. Now he can recall many close-up shots he has seen before, which naturally include many plot elements from Ultraman. That's why the morning and evening couldn't help but be surprised by the King of Obumans. In the memory of the metaverse battle, the King of Obumans did not have a move similar to the illumination bullet, even its split form, and the source of the bone wings Super Beast Bajelis, did not reflect such a move. That is to say, this is a new move developed by King Obumanth based on his own abilities in a short period of time. Roar, do you mean? Let me tame it. The deafening roar of King Obumans successfully pulled Morning and Dusk back from his thoughts. However, the words contained in the roar of King Obumanth surprised Dawn. After all, this was the first time he had heard the elf actively asking the owner to to catch other elves, except for a cat walking upright in Pokémon. Although there were doubts in his heart, King Obumans quickly gave his answer to Chunwu. That is to say, the departure of the Red Ball has caused a significant loss for the Obumans King. After experiencing the benefits of the combat equipment, it expressed the need to stay in the combat equipment for in-depth repairs. As a replacement for dawn and dusk during the repair period, King Obumans thought of the empty space in the combat equipment. Coincidentally, at this point in time, I encountered a solitary wild monster. Tailenstone. With the help of the special energy ball of the high-altitude Obumans King, who bears the small sun, Dawn-Dusk saw a familiar monster rolling in the sand pit ahead, pulling its head with its own short hands. The underground monster Tailenstone first appeared in Ultraman's senior-level monster and has since appeared in many works. But its strength can be said to be quite poor, compared to the King of Obumans. It is not particularly strong, and for Ultra Warriors, it is usually considered as a mixed fish. It is a true dragon suit monster. To be honest, with the powerful presence of King Obumans, Morning and Dusk's vision for the monsters they will conquer in the future has increased significantly. Not just the bosses in the theatrical version, but also the powerful monsters in the plot, such as the Golden Dragon Godras, the Metaverse Synthesis Beast Neokomos, and the Cosmic Ninja Beast Kurisabaga. Therefore, for this Tailenstone Morning and Dusk are somewhat unsightly. Chapter 5. Magnetic Monster Antona. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Roar, okay, I got it. Listening to the urging voice of King Obumans, the morning and evening also understood the other party's meaning. As a replacement for the recovery period of King Obumans, I am not very interested in Tailenstone in the morning and evening. However, in the current situation, he has no other choice besides this guy. It's impossible to have another monster or dragging the healing time of King Obumans to find other possible monsters, right? If it's Pigmon or any monster weaker than Tailenstone, there shouldn't be anyone worse off than Tailenstone, right? Despite this thought, Morning and Dusk ultimately decided to subdue this Tailenstone. After all, there are no other options now. So, it's up to you, Tyrant. As a Leonix, Morning and Dusk are very clear about their positioning as trainers for the monsters. Just like the Pokémon next door, the cute and adorable elves here are huge and ferocious monsters. After defeating other monsters, the monsters in Leonix will collect the energy dissipated during the battle and use it to heal and strengthen the monsters in the combat equipment. The underground monster Tailenstone is a native earth monster that lives in underground lava. If the only way for King Obumans to become stronger is through continuous combat, then for this guy, Morning and Dusk feel much easier to handle. If the monsters are divided according to the four-element theory in Ob, Tailenstone should occupy two attributes. Land and fire. Referring to the same type of monster Golzon, it is theoretically possible to make Tyrant stronger through volcanoes and even underground lava. Even evolving into new forms like Gorzon is not impossible. Schwa, the side of the combat device unfolds, and golden energy cards fly out from it, aiming straight at Tailenstone in the sand pit. But, roar. The roar of King Obumans echoed along with another strange sound. Accompanied by the vibration of the ground and the surging of sand, an unexpected guest emerged from the sand. The golden energy card collided with the opponent's suddenly protruding head, but after a moment of stalemate, the capture card of the combat instrument dissipated into golden energy particles in the air. What? The sudden situation surprised Morning Twilight, but upon seeing the monster's shape, it was instantly replaced by surprise. That was a bug-like monster that resembled a giant beetle, but as soon as it emerged from the sand, it was forcefully whipped out by King Obumans. Antona. Watching as he quickly climbed up from the sand not far away, his white little eyes were fixed on the grey armored monster of King Obumans. Morning and Dusk quickly found the name of the monster in their memory. Like Tailenstone, he is a monster in the first-generation Ultraman TV, but compared to Tailenstone, his strength in the plot can be considered a powerhouse. Magnetic Monster Antona. In the first Ultraman, it was a legendary monster belonging to ancient times that was repelled by the so-called God of Noah, and later killed by the first Ultraman in cooperation with the Kot team. For the so-called God of Noah, Morning and Dusk felt that the other person was actually the adult, the invincible Zophi. After all, that shape only Zophi could match. Antona's entire body is covered in a hard shell, and her defense can even withstand the sparsim light of the first Ultraman. Special airflow can be exhaled from the mouth, manipulating the sand to create a sandstorm climate for easy concealment of one's own movements. Its signature ability is to manipulate magnetic force, and the magnetic light emitted from its mouth has a very strong traction force. Even passenger planes flying in high altitude can be easily pulled down by it and become food in its belly. If it weren't for the last Divine Arm Captain's divine assist like throwing strike, then the first Ultraman would have used a bug like Ultraman's psychic power to solve Antona. Compared to Tailenstone, Antona is undoubtedly stronger and more in line with the goal of winning in the morning and evening. How is the situation now, King Obumans? Roar. The response to the morning dusk was the slightly low growl of King Obumans. Through the connection between the two, Chinwu understands the meaning that King Obumans is trying to reassure himself, and he also understands Chinwu's desire to win over Antona. Wow! Just as King Obumans and Antona were gazing at each other and the atmosphere was rapidly tense, the first person to take action was Tailenstone, who was originally overlooked on the side. After recovering from blindness, Tyrant took advantage of the two powerful monsters confronting each other and had no intention of dealing with him for the time being. Immediately, he waved his claws and skillfully retreated underground, evacuating the battlefield. Both monsters didn't pay attention to this, including Dawn and Dusk. After all, the goal of King Obumans and Morning Dusk now is to subdue Antona, while Antona is thinking about how to defeat the powerful opponent in front of him. The possibility of escape is basically zero, and with the reaction speed of King Obumans, when Antona sets out to dig a hole, he will immediately approach and attack. Therefore, Antona's only solution is to fight. Roar. Go up, King Obumans. The first one to take action is the King Obumans. After all, its current situation requires quick combat and quick decision-making to enter the combat equipment for treatment as soon as possible. King Obumans roared and strode towards Antona. And at the moment Antona saw the action of King Obumans, he immediately opened the pair of huge jawbones. The special airflow blowing out of the mouth swept up the sand on the ground, causing the dormant sand and dust to rise again. King Obumans broke open the sand curtain and did not charge straight as Antona had expected. But instead, he immediately adjusted his body shape, and with a swift sweep from his saws, he threw Antona, who intended to use sand and dust to sneak into the morning and dusk, out again. King Obumans, burn the beam. Roar. Seeing Antona fall to the ground, he immediately gave instructions to King Obumans at dawn and dusk. The special red crystals between the eyes quickly opened and closed, without too much energy accumulation, and the simplified version of Gremit's light sprayed out towards Antona. The orange energy beam directly hit Antona, causing her to emit a huge explosion. Antona flew backwards with the explosion of light, weakly collapsing in the sand pit, emitting waves of white steam all over her body. Obviously, Obumans' response to the command of dawn and dusk did not solve the opponent, but rather set the power of the light at a level that could make the opponent lose their mobility without dying. Go ahead. Morning Dusk raised the combat instrument in his hand, and the golden card flew out again, but unlike before, there were no obstacles this time. The capture card of the combat device smoothly reached Antona's head, who had lost his mobility. As Antona transformed into energy particles and entered the card, this huge antlion monster became the second monster under Morningfall's command. Chapter 6. Cities Under the Sand, Part 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Antona, how long is there to reach the target? One person and one beast slowly advanced in the gloomy desert shrouded in yellow sand. Antona, who was in charge of the car, occasionally spewed out mist from her mouth, controlling the sand and stones blowing towards her to pave a dust-free path for the dawn and dusk on her shoulders. It has been about 5 days since the meeting with King Obumans at dawn and the conquest of Antona. After Antona recovered from the combat gear, and after some friendly exchanges with King Obumans in the combat gear, this antlion also recognized its current situation. I have no complaints about becoming the combat partner of the Leonix in the morning and evening, and even willingly accept it. And the morning and evening also received some intelligence from Antona's mouth. Apart from removing food and similar trivial matters, the most useful one is an underground ruins that Antona once visited. According to Antona's description, there is a huge statue of humanoid life that resembles dawn and dusk. Although Antona ate the statue due to food issues, there are traces of intelligent life activities, and I really want to go there and take a look in the morning and evening. Not only do I want to find a decent piece of clothing, but I also want to see if there has been anything happening here before. After all, that red ball once said that morning dusk was the last human on this planet under the leadership of Antona. Dawn and dusk had already walked from their original position for 5 days. During this period, I also felt the monster-like way of eating that was not present in the drama on the way. The morning and evening were attacked by many monsters. Things like Tailenstone, Sadra, Dayton, and even a Guduan. These enemies, aided by Antona's active engagement and the skills of King Obumans, all collapsed and transformed into energy stored in the combat equipment. And the monster feeding outside the plot that I saw in the morning and evening came from Antona at that time. Anton, who had defeated the enemy, leaned in front of Tailenstone, who had been cut off by his own life. After being asked if she wanted to eat in the morning and evening, but was puzzled and refused, Antona lay down and leaned her head towards the cut in Terence's neck. The huge jaw forceps opened, and a slightly slender tubular mouthpiece, compared to its huge size, protruded from its mouth and pierced into the fracture where Tailenstone was still gushing hot blood. Just like drinking a drink with a straw, Tyran's once plump body quickly withered under Antona's strong suction. Antona, who had disposed of the food, patted her bulging abdomen and returned to the combat equipment with satisfaction. Only a bewildered morning days remained, staring blankly at the withered body and dying head left behind by Tailenstone ahead, slightly lost in thought, as if recalling the process of Antona eating just now, returning to the present, after experiencing the attack of Gudan. Morning and dusk chose to directly release Antona as a means of transportation and also a bodyguard against monster attacks. Although 5 days have passed, the King of Obumans is still in a state of repair, or in other words, has entered a critical moment of repair and is temporarily unable to leave the combat equipment. However, even so, King Obumans is still able to provide necessary protection for dawn and dusk, such as deploying the bone wing light shield in a combat device for defense. I really want to have a normal meal. Grasping Antona's shoulder spine with one hand, feeling the growling belly, the empty hand in the morning and evening pulled out a piece of blood-stained shredded meat from a special leather bag at her waist. After looking at it with an unpleasant expression on his face for a while, he still chose to swallow it in one gulp, and couldn't help but miss the delicious food he once had when he was still on Earth. In 5 days, even though Leonix has a non-human physique, at the end of the day, he is still a creature. As long as it is still a living organism, it will feel hungry and thirsty. So it requires eating and drinking water. Morning and dusk are no exception. In the short yet long 5 days, he didn't go hungry at dawn or dusk. After all, he didn't want to die yet. After witnessing Antona's eating, I also asked the other party about possible water sources nearby in the morning and evening. But including the ruins buried underground, there is no water source or even vegetation nearby, only a bare-blown stone desert and large monsters walking at night. Before encountering dawn and dusk, Antona relied on hunting the slightly weaker monsters like Tailenstone, feeding on their flesh and blood to maintain her strength. Being able to encounter dawn and dusk is also because the Tailenstone is actually the prey that Antona is eyeing. Regardless of the cause, in order to survive, in the morning and evening, one must learn the way of Antona and engage in the primitive life of Mauru drinking blood. Eating the rare and hard pieces of meat specially shaved by Antona, even in the morning and evening, Leonix's physique is still incredibly hard, and drinking the thick and hot monster blood like molten iron. Let Antona crush a Tailenstone's paw, collect large fragments, and wrap them in the remaining tough skin to make a simple dagger that can be used. Later, after encountering the attack of Guduan, the morning and evening after resolving Guduan was when he welcomed his own set of attire as a primitive. As a famous double whip monster, Guduan's entire body is not limited to the two thick and long meat whips wielded as weapons in his hands. It also has flexible cilia of varying sizes on its body. With these body tissues that can serve as ropes, Dawn and Dusk combine them with the skin of Tailenstone to create a simple leather leg guard and even a shoulder bag for themselves. It is worth praising that although the clothes are very simple, after putting them on, the morning and evening no longer feel as cold as before, as if they were in ice and snow. This may be due to the special nature of the material. After all, the main material is the underground monster Tailenstone, which can absorb magma. What? We've arrived at the destination. After chewing on the tasteless and unusually solid monster meat like chewing wood for a distance, Antona, as a ruthless driving machine, finally stopped in her tracks. He put the hard piece of meat that had been chewed halfway back into his shoulder bag, took a step forward in the morning and dusk, was caught by Anton and sent to the ground. Is that ruins? After patting the sand particles on his body and thanking Anton, he looked up at the huge building that was covered in sand but still had its basic shape. That is a huge golden disc, and all that can be seen is the tip that is exposed due to tilting. There may be a load-bearing body underneath, but it has been buried in the desert and is completely invisible. Chapter 7. Cities Under the Sand, Part 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. So, is this the location of the ruins? Looking at the huge round wheel emerging from the sand not far away, Chindusk asked Antona with some uncertainty. But as soon as the words were spoken, Dawn and Dusk immediately realized the problem with their own problems. This area is covered in yellow sand every day. The entrance dug by Antona not long ago should have been reburied by these sandy soil. Fortunately, Antona didn't pay any attention to the words of Dawn or Dusk, or for him, whatever Dawn or Dusk said. Antona first let out a roar to signal her retreat towards Dawn and Dusk, and then strode forward. Stop in front of the golden wheel and lower your head to start spewing out the unique airflow that controls sand and dust. As the sand was controlled by Antona's Lanlu to scatter on both sides, in the blink of an eye it dug out a sand pit that could perfectly accommodate itself. After finishing all of this, Antona stopped her mouth movements and turned around, barking towards Dawn and Dusk, signaling him to jump onto her body. Okay. The Morning and Dusk, who understood Antona's meaning, immediately started and ran over, leaping with Superman's physique, and finally landed steadily in the pit on Antona's carapace head. Let's go. Antona let out a cry again, and after obtaining permission from Morning Dusk, she blew a mist to protect her. Then, she quickly dug up the sand below and went straight down. One person and one animal quickly dug and sneaked down along the position of the golden disc, and the sand and soil dug up midway were also swept up and thrown out by Antona's control of the airflow. I didn't spend too much time digging. After all, the skill of digging holes can also be considered a talent operation for monsters like Antona. Soon, Dawn and Dusk, led by Antona, dug up the target or encountered obstacles. Is this metal? Grasping tightly onto a small, tough and straight tuft of hair on Antona's bald skull, he carefully poked his head out in the morning and looked at the large silver metal under Antona's feet that was clearly distinguished from the surrounding sand and soil in confusion. The unknown metal that can withstand the weight of Antona, which is clearly a technological product of intelligent life manufacturing, and the exposed golden disc above, make Chindusk firmly believe that there must be footprints left by intelligent life here. Although Antona said there is a huge humanoid statue here, it's really hard to say if the other person is human. Of course, all of these are just wishful thinking in the morning and dusk. To truly determine who the traces left here are, or to see them with one's own eyes. Antona. Ga. With the command given at dawn and dusk, Antona also responded symbolically. Then he opened his fierce jaws and lowered his head to aim at the exceptionally hard silver metal under his feet for a powerful attack. This silver metal can withstand the weight of Antona, and naturally it can also withstand its claws. Knowing this, Antona naturally used her signature moves just like when she visited before. The two wide pliers are like signal amplifiers. A dazzling beam of rainbow-like colors spewed out from Antona's mouth. That's its signature killer move, the magnetic beam. It has the effect of magnetizing objects and even manipulating metals, which theoretically has a special attack effect on mechanical monsters. This is also the reason why morning and dusk are willing to conquer Antona. The colors emitted by the light beam towards the surroundings are rendering the air, and the distorted and dazzling environment makes the morning and dusk feel nauseous and nauseating. With the hit of the magnetic beam, the silver metal also twisted visibly with the mottled rhythm of the rainbow, gradually squeezing and deforming downwards, emitting a squeaking mournful sound. Finally, unable to bear the weight of Antona, it crashed down. Damn it, what the hell is going on now? As Anton fell down together, he did not feel the feeling of Anton's solid and safe skull pit in the morning and evening. Instead, it is the boundless darkness and the sense of weightlessness brought about by natural falling. No matter how slow the morning and dusk were, he realized his current situation, and what was worse was that he seemed unable to get rid of it. Antona had already fallen down one step ahead of him, and although he was a Leonix with an extraordinary physique, he was ultimately an earthling. Without any special energy or tools, it is impossible to achieve the feats of aliens soaring into the sky. Do we have to send it here? Feeling the strong wind blowing from the free fall, I couldn't help but close my eyes in the morning and dusk, as if welcoming my own fall. However, the answer is not so. At the next moment, a bright yellow light flickered from the position of the tyrant leather armor pants at the waist. That is the location of the Dawn Twilight Leonix combat instrument, and it is evident that King Obumans will not stand idly by in the face of the danger encountered by Dawn Twilight. The golden energy of the super beast Bigellus, symbolizing the King of Obumans or its composite components, constantly flickers in the combat equipment. On dot. With a loud cry, the golden broad bone wings extended from the combat equipment hanging on the waist in the morning dusk, beating the air to let the morning dusk land safely. Thank you, but we still need your help from now on, Bigellus. Take off the slightly hot combat equipment from your waist, and aim for Antona, who is lying on the ground trying to get up in front of you, to successfully put it away. Then, facing the individual separated from the battle equipment by the King Obumans, the bone-winged superbeast Bigellus softly thanked him. That's right, it's Bigellus, not King Obumans. After sensing Antona's unreliable behavior, King Obumans decided to differentiate his flying clones to help with dawn and dusk. Fortunately, the differentiation of Bigellus did not cause any damage to the deep healing of King Obumans. It's like selecting levels, you can challenge them one by one, or you can challenge them out of order. Completing one of them first will not affect the other two, but completing all three can lead to the final challenge. The sound of Bigellus' loud cry came from the combat instrument, and then the entire combat instrument entered a unique form, emitting illuminating lights from the window where Bigellus was staying. This, whether or not to say it, is really high. With the help of the light of the Bigellus flashlight, the morning and evening looked towards the place where they had come, but it was only darkness and even the damaged silver ceiling could not be seen. Just like the gloomy night sky, the height is self-evident. Which way should we go? We've all arrived, or should we take a step and see? Looking around at the mysterious silver metal walls filled with the SCI.FI vibe of the past on TV, Morning and Dusk noticed that they were now at a fork in the road. After intense intracranial thinking, he decided to move forward. With the presence of Antona and Bagillis in the combat equipment, he can be said to have full confidence now. Chapter 8. Mechanical Combat Research Department. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Good news. The first monster that we personally cast XX belongs to everyone. Explorer Guy Zach will start exploring the outside world in XXX. Our human tomorrow is just around the corner. Project name. Explorer code name. Gayazak number. 01 height. 49 meters body XXXXXXX. Good news. The first victory for Gayazak. In this exploration, Gayazak defeated the monster pack and led the exploration team back successfully. Given the external intelligence and monster remains brought about by this exploration, the Great Supreme Council has decided to launch the Battle Beast program to assist in surveying the outside world. The monsters that Gayazak has clearly defeated are the rock monster Sadra and several other monsters such as the Ripper Lament. The Explorer plan was rejected by the Supreme Council, and the glorious Gayazak may never wait for his brothers and sisters XXXXXX recorded in the year 268 of the chaotic era XXXXXX. As I cautiously walked along the wide silver passage, I suddenly picked up something similar to a report form. Explorers. Gayazak. And the Supreme Council, what are these all about? I don't know what material the report sheet is made of, but it feels good to the touch, like it can be stored for a long time. The above records some relevant information about Gayazak, although most of the handwriting on it has become burnt black and blurry. But even so, there is still a lot of content preserved on it. I don't know if it's because of being a Leonix or something, even though Dawn knows clearly that he has never learned these words on the report form. He is able to understand the general meaning of each word. However, on the whole, this report only records the birth and end of an exploration mechanical monster called Gayazak. From the celebration of birth to the abandonment of new plans. You can see some of the moments experienced by humans here from this report, but there is nothing else useful. The chaotic era of 268 years. Refers to the year recorded in this report, so what is now? Forget it, let's walk forward and see. I haven't seen the human statue described by Antona yet. However, even in the morning and evening, one would not believe that there is still human existence here. After all, the raging desert outside and the description of red globe are enough to make morning dusk destroy the heart that wants to find its kind. Now he only thinks about how to survive and live better, continuing along the silver passage, passing through another fork in the road, passing through a unique silver box building resembling a residential area. After a brief search, the morning and evening continued along the passage, arriving at a very special place, Mechanical Experimental Center. Standing outside the metal fence, looking at the blurry words on the burnt black plaque on the wall, I read with some uncertainty in the morning and evening. This is a huge factory-like building located next to that residential area. The house in the residential area has the same silver box shape, but it is more huge. Looking back from here, you can still see many boxes connected to this, but even larger ones. Combined with the plaque of this mechanical experiment center, Dawn and Dusk couldn't help but think of the Gayazak report form they had found before, as well as the flyer for the security machinery they had found in the house in the residential area. Forget it, let's go in and take a look like usual, Antona. Although there are things like gates here, they are completely part of the iron box without energy drive, and cannot be used. Take out the combat equipment and command Antona inside at dawn and dusk. Taking inspiration from the previous King Obumans and Bagillis, Dawn Twilight has realized that monsters can use their special skills even in combat equipment. Therefore, he had previously used Antona's magnetic light to freely enter and exit a residential area, and searched for something he could understand and use. Although I don't know if all the LeBronx can do this, or if it's just myself, after all, in my impression, the original LeBronx did not show this kind of performance. The window of the combat instrument is aligned with the metal wall in front of it, and Antona, who is located in it, has also been prepared. Click, colorful beams of light burst out, and in an instant, the surroundings once again entered that dizzying and twisted environment. As the power of magnetic light increased, the originally thick metal wall began to gradually twist and squeeze, and finally a large, round cake was pulled off from it and casually thrown aside. Oh, it's quite big. I crawled through the outer wall and quickly entered the first large iron box at dawn and dusk. As expected, this is a factory-like building. The instruments of various large machine tools are still well placed there, and it is worth noting that the central position is a huge metal pillar. Quickly walking over, I only realized in the morning and evening that it was another iron box or a coffin. However, the lid of the coffin has been lifted off, and what should have been inside has disappeared without a trace. This is. In the morning and dusk, searching along the metal coffin, I suddenly saw a familiar paper that flickered in the darkness. It was a special paper similar to the previous report by Guy Zach. Plan name: Mechanical Combat Beast, code name: Kaigobu, number 33, height 85 meters, weight 100,000 tons, experimental progress 100%, status. In use, first victory against the rock monster Sadra, victory against the ancient monster Gamara, victory against the skeleton monster King Red. The content recorded above is similar to that of Gayazak before, but it is more concise and clear. And there are no burnt marks on the outside one, so there is not much missing from the content. The main content of this paper is the data and achievements of the Super Gob. There is a premonition in the morning and evening. The owner of this paper must be one of the creators of this mechanical combat beast, the Super Gob. After all, this kind of record must be something that the creator has the best understanding of, right? Search this area again, find some tools like wrenches, and stack them in the same large package as the bottles, jars, and jars found in the residential area before continuing towards the building behind. In the morning and evening, the subsequent blind box detection in the factory is similar to the process in this Super Gob, where all the presents inside the central coffin is missing, leaving only an empty coffin lying horizontally there. Until the last few connected metal boxes that looked different, the boring journey of unboxing in the morning and evening finally brought interesting things. Chapter 9. World Information. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wandering one by one in the densely populated factory area, I arrived at the last building in the area at dawn and dusk. Unlike other factories that use the same model of silver metal boxes, the difference is that they are even larger, and there are several uniquely shaped metal pillars standing in front of the door. The top of the pillar is wrapped with special cables, leading to the depths of the factory. Walking deep along the cable, as before, Chandusk did not encounter any possible attacks, and even saw the remains of several mechanism crossbows and arrows. This also proves that even if there are traps here, they are damaged due to time constraints, and there is no evidence of living people advance along the cable to the deepest and final destination of this factory. Presented in front of dawn and dusk are two huge buildings that resemble training pods. Unlike the previous coffin, this time there are two jars, and these two jars still contain two huge life forms. Plan name: Mechanical Combat Beast, code name: Hilton Long, number 65, renovation progress 100%, status. Sleep, code name: Hilbagong, number 64, renovation progress 100%, status. Sleep, there are two plaques standing next to the cultivation module, which, like before, record the condition of the monsters, but the exhibits here are still there. The two monsters soaked in the cultivation chamber also have an impression of them in the morning and evening. The mutated insect Hilton Long and the powerful monster Hilbagon. The former first appeared in Dana Ultraman, while the latter appeared in the former's predecessor Diga Ultraman. It is worth mentioning that the two AO have the same worldview, which led to the day when these two monsters will meet. Monster Island, known as the source of all evil by netizens, is remembered in the memory of Dawn and Dusk. That's where these two appear together. The specific point is to stack the boxes. Hilton Dragon is not as good as Hilbegong, and Hilbegong was later eliminated as a supporting figure by Neozers. Digga, who stands out one by one as a senior, is completely inferior to Dana. After all, in terms of setting, the Silver Dragon as a clone is even more powerful than its original form. In this comparison, the Silver Dragon, which was able to suppress the mighty Digga and even resist the light line of Zai Pei Li Ao, was thus suppressed by the Red Dragon, and the Red Dragon was ultimately defeated by the Garnet bombing of the mighty Dana. Because the boxes were stacked too clearly, they were mocked as the source of all evil back to now, although both monsters are soaking in what looks like a cultivation chamber and are marked as dormant. But at Dawn and Dusk, it felt like these two enemies from another world had no chance to wake up again. After all, based on the discoveries made along the way, this place that can be called the base has stopped operating for an unknown amount of time. The substances soaked in by the two monsters should have lost their effectiveness, which should be nutrient solution. Looking at the semi-mechanized Hilton long soaked in a huge glass cover in front of him, and at the ferocious face of the other person wearing a mechanical mask even though he didn't know how long it had been soaked. Morning and Dusk couldn't help but reach out and touch the glass cover in front of them. There was no response, and the expected awakening event from the horror movie did not occur. Slightly disappointed, but thinking about it, it's also true. Chindusk shook her head and turned towards a table with scattered file bags scattered on the side. Urgent. The mobile death sandstorm is raging. The legacy of our ancestors who wished for a red ball, the extraterrestrial cosmonauts, our human destiny, a special creature called a super beast is also in this world, so it is of different dimensions. The combat effectiveness of the mechanical guardians is extraordinary. Has our destiny been determined as before? Even though these words are completely unrecognized, the meaning of them can still be understood in the morning and evening. After simply flipping through some, I gave up reading in the morning and evening. Like before, there are also defects on top of these, although they are not harmful, they still look very strange. However, even so, Dawn and Dusk still learn some information about this world. Although it may be some outdated information from unknown years ago. Firstly, the experience of this world indeed comes from the influence of the wishing red ball. Before the establishment of this base, I don't know when, the red ball has landed in this world. Under the call of a complex and vast group of people with various thoughts and desires, one after another. A large number of creations that did not originally belong to this world flooded here, causing the arrival of destruction. At that time, it was recorded as the Chaotic Era. In the Chaotic Era, the people influenced by the red ball and the creatures summoned to this world wreaked havoc, causing cities to be overturned one by one. The traces of civilization on the surface were quickly eliminated, and everything returned to the once chaotic state of war. The urban street battles between superpowers, and the destructive collisions between monsters. Under people's different desires, the red ball summons not only monsters and giants. There are also abilities or special items from other fantasy works. And those special things that have been preserved in the past are also called remnants, because they are the items left behind by those who died, and it is also easy to call them. And it's not just the arcane monsters that are summoned, but in order to distinguish them, the survivors also named them Warcraft. There is no special level division, just a threat level division. Things like being able to handle with a knife and firearms. But those monsters cannot be classified using this method. After all, people at that time had no defense against the walking beasts. The nuclear warhead did not die immediately after hitting, and its strong vitality even gave birth to even more terrifying monsters. And that is the target named Death Sandstorm. Morning Dusk noticed something while flipping through it. The wind of death that blew up from the radiation-ridden area named the Death Zone has been determined by senior management to be a mutated monster that appeared to have survived the nuclear explosion. I don't know why, but I feel that the current environment of sandstorms is related to this so-called Death Sandstorm. Speaking of super beasts, what this information records is a speculation. In front of us are cosmic beings who are not sure if they are summoned by the red ball or how they appeared. Unfortunately, the information is completely unclear, so it can only be invalidated. And this is an inference about the super beast. As is well known, most of these biological weapons, such as super beasts, are produced by the Oppo people of different dimensions. And among the monsters summoned by the red ball are these monster weapons. Therefore, people at that time would ponder whether the cross-dimensional humans who could cross the world would also target this world based on the traces of the super beasts, given the existence of the Red Ball Club. Chandusk felt that their concerns were not unreasonable. After all, the Apollonians behind could really travel across the world through the traces of super beasts. Chapter 10. The Eve of the Journey. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Buzz, at this moment, a strange sound came from the combat instrument on the waist at dawn and dusk. What's wrong? Morning Dusk picked up the combat equipment, and inside came the slightly excited shouts of Bagillis. Sensing the presence of high-energy objects. Energy is undoubtedly essential for the growth of monsters. Whether it's releasing deadly skills during battles or consuming them in daily life, they all rely on the support of energy. If it is a wild monster, the energy absorption can be achieved through inefficient methods such as eating or natural waiting. The combat equipment held by the Leonix omits these processes, providing pure and continuous energy for the monsters more conveniently. However, even so, the restoration project of King Obumans will take some time, and the high-energy objects detected by Bagillis will undoubtedly reduce the time required for this process. Just like the heavenly and earthly treasures in fantasy cultivation novels, they contain special products with beneficial energy, which is not unattractive for the current dawn and dusk. So let's go. Put the file marked with the Dai Qianghao manufacturing plan back on the table, pick up the combat equipment in the morning and follow Bagillis' guidance towards the outside. Detection. ZZ. Human. ZZ. Still exists. ZZ. Alive. ZZ. Report completed. After he left, a faint red light suddenly lit up on the ceiling of the original room and quickly closed. It's quite big here. Step out of the monster factory and continue walking along the pipeline. Crossing a building that looks like a bridge, passing through a group of square buildings. Dawn and dusk arrived at the location of the huge statue that Antona had mentioned. It really looks like a human. Standing in an open area like a square, I looked up at this huge statue that was dozens or even hundreds of meters high in the morning and evening. The statue features a male character wearing a suit and formal attire. I can't see my facial features clearly because the height of the statue is too high and the environment is pitch black. This statue is not forged from the silver metal that can be seen everywhere here, but from another metal that looks like brass. The texture is very hard, and I tried it in the morning and evening, but it is not at the current level that I can knock it down hard. Buzz, I know, let's go. Feeling the urging of Bagillis in the combat equipment, although morning and dusk wanted to observe the majestic figure of the great man in this dungeon again. Unfortunately, compared to this, it is indeed more important for the healing of King Obumans. Come and see you later. Waving goodbye to the huge and magnificent statue, following the guidance of Bagillis, the morning and evening continued to move forward. Gudu, located deep underground on this planet, a hot spot filled with lava from the center of the earth. The hot lava is constantly surging and boiling, and the hot magma sprays onto the surrounding black rocks, making a sizzling sound. In such a high temperature and high pressure environment, life still resides here. On a huge black rock at the center of the magma lake, a massive lizard is lying on top to rest. Every breath blows the lava ahead, bringing back some special energy from the lava. It is precisely by lying in this high temperature and high pressure environment day and night that the giant lizard can forge such a powerful physique. If dawn and dusk were here, one could definitely tell that this somewhat dark giant lizard was Tailenstone. However, compared to the ordinary Tailenstone, this Tailenstone has a larger physique and a deeper skin tone. Not only that, its skin also grows strong gray-black scales, forming thick black scales. With its massive size and heavy scales, it is no longer able to walk upright on both feet like an ordinary tyrant. This kind of thing is more inclined towards guys like Skeleton, rather than being Tailenstone. Roar. Just as Tyrant leaned against the worn ground for a short rest, a roar of the same kind could be heard in the distance, which was a warning to the leader that something urgent had happened. That's right, this Tailenstone is the ethnic leader of the Tailenstones on this planet. As a result, it is also one of the most powerful tyrants here, without exception. Upon hearing the cries of his peers, Tyrant glanced at the boiling lava in front of him and then plunged into it. Just like a diver entering the water, the magma here is not too much for this Tailenstone. Swimming along the direction of the magma, leaping out of the magma lake, the Tailenstone king quickly arrived at the source of the call, the slightly smaller black cave where his fellow countrymen were located. However, compared to the massive size of the Tyrant King, this cave still cannot accommodate its body. Roar! A shout came from the soles of his feet, and the Tyrant King lay down and gazed at this creature that was only the size of his own head. If dawn and dusk were here, he would find that the Tailenstone, who was trying to communicate with the Tailenstone King, was the one he had been trying to capture. The body size of the Tyrant King is exceptionally large, and if we are looking for a reference, it is the difference between the second form of Zog and the two orcs of Geru. Roar, being stared at by such a huge presence, even though it knew the other person was its own leader, this Tailenstone couldn't help feeling scared. However, even so, it still tells its own leader everything it knows. Roar, after listening to Tyrant's report, King Tyrant nodded humanely. Then he ignored it and turned around, heading towards the magma lake without looking back and diving into it. Roar. Tyrant watched as King Tyrant left and turned to look at the trembling Tyrant stones hiding deep in the cave. Their bright and lively eyes were filled with confusion. It may feel a bit lost in completing the task, but depending on the situation, it has a feeling that its leader will definitely take some action. Is this the source of energy fluctuations? Continuing forward from the square of the statue and crossing several areas, the morning and evening were guided by Bagillis to a place that looked like a temple. There was no surprise in the morning or evening that Bagillis could perceive energy. It was originally a clone of the King Obumans, and in addition, it is a special existence like a super beast. Being able to search for energy is a skill that would only surprise Bagillis in the morning and evening if he didn't know it.